Ever since she was a child, she had always been drawn to stories, stories in books, in plays, on screen, and especially the way people looked in them, not just their faces, but what they wore. She used to sit quietly in her room, sketching clothes she imagined characters would wear. At the time, it was just a fun thing she loved to do. No one around her really thought much of it, but deep inside, she always felt it meant something more. Growing up, she didn't know anyone who worked in theater or film. In her town, those dreams felt distant, like something that only happened in London or on television. Still, she kept drawing. She would walk past charity shops and pick up old clothes, imagining how she might change them. Cut here, stitch there, turning something ordinary into something magical. Her room slowly filled with scraps of fabric, old buttons, safety pins, and notebooks bursting with ideas. At school, people would say, "That's nice, but what do you really want to do?" And she never quite knew how to answer, because this was what she really wanted to do. It didn't have a clear path, and it didn't come with a guaranteed paycheck, but it made her feel alive. The thought of bringing a story to life through costume, of making characters feel real and believable by what they wore, fascinated her. So when it came time to choose what to study, she took a leap. She applied to a small college that offered costume design, even though most of her friends were going into more traditional fields. She didn't know what to expect. On her first day, she looked around the room and saw other people who shared that same spark in their eyes. It was both intimidating and exciting. She realized she had found her place. The classes weren't always easy. She had to learn how to sew properly, how to read scripts, how to understand characters deeply, not just what they wore, but why they wore it. Every cooler, every texture, every shape told a part of the story. She spent long hours in the workshop, sometimes forgetting to eat, completely immersed in her work. She would listen to old film soundtracks or recordings of Shakespeare plays while she stitched late into the night. Then came her first real opportunity. A small local theater was doing a modern version of a classic play, and they needed a student to help with costumes. She jumped at the chance. It wasn't glamorous. She was steaming wrinkled dresses, repairing zips, pinning hems. But it was real. She loved being backstage, hearing the actors run through lines, feeling the nerves just before the curtain rose. She loved watching something she helped create come to life under the lights. From there, she said yes to everything she could. Student films, fringe theater, low-budget TV pilot. Each one taught her something new. Some days she questioned herself. Was this going anywhere? Was she good enough? But then she'd receive a message from an actor saying, "Wearing this costume helped me become my character." And it reminded her why she started. Slowly, word spread. People began to recommend her. She was offered better jobs. She worked with directors who respected her opinion, who asked for her ideas. She had a style, subtle, detailed, always rooted in story. She didn't just create clothes. She created people. Looking back, she knows how brave that first step was. To believe in something that wasn't certain. To follow a path that wasn't clearly marked. But if she hadn't, she would have missed all of it. The lights, the rush of opening night, the joy of seeing her work reflected in someone else's performance. All she did was follow what felt right, her passion, her curiosity, her belief that stories matter, and that costume is a powerful part of storytelling. And that one choice to follow it changed everything. After finishing her studies, she found herself at the beginning of the real journey. There were no grand offers waiting, no spotlight or applause, just a quiet understanding that she had to start small. So that's exactly what she did. She took on work wherever she could find it, even if it meant long hours and very little pay. Local theaters became her training ground. She worked behind the scenes, assisting costume supervisors, steaming dresses, fixing ripped trousers, carefully labeling each item so that everything was ready when the curtain rose. Theaters had their own rhythm. Mornings started with fittings, afternoons were filled with last-minute adjustments, and evenings brought the buzz of performance. She grew to love the backstage chaos, actors rushing to change costumes, the soft crackle of radios in her ear, the steady hum of focus. She wasn't designing lead roles at first. Sometimes she was simply adjusting collars or ironing shirts, but she was learning. Every production taught her something: how to listen, how to observe, how to make choices that served the story instead of just the costume. Bit by bit, she was trusted with more. Someone noticed her attention to detail. Someone else recommended her for a small TV gig, a background wardrobe assistant for a daytime drama. It wasn't glamorous. Most of the time she was logging costume changes or running to find the right shoes for a supporting actor. But it was her first step into television, and she treated it with the same care she'd shown in theater. She found that working in TV was different. Everything moved faster. There were tight deadlines, quick turnarounds, and far more people involved. The camera saw everything: the frayed edge of a sleeve, the wrong shade of lipstick, the fit of a jacket that didn't quite suit the character. She had to be sharper, quicker, more precise, but she liked the pressure. It made her grow. Soon she was offered more freelance work, short films, commercials, web series, projects that didn't pay much but gave her room to stretch creatively. She said yes often, not because it was easy, but because every job added something new to her experience. She worked with actors just starting out, and with ones who'd been in the industry for years. She listened to directors who spoke in images, moods, colors. She learned to translate all of that into fabric, into texture, into shape. Her designs were beginning to stand out. They weren't flashy or loud, but they felt real, authentic. Whether it was a school teacher in the 1980s or a nurse in a futuristic drama, her costumes made sense. They helped the audience believe, and that's what she loved most, being invisible in the best way, helping the story speak without drawing too much attention to herself. Even though she started small, each job was a building block. Each set she stepped on was a new classroom. She made mistakes, of course. Everyone does. A mismatched outfit here, a fabric choice that didn't land well there, but every mistake sharpened her instincts. She began to trust her eye more. She knew when something felt wrong, and more importantly, how to fix it. Theaters still called her back now and then. She liked going back to them. They reminded her of her roots, the simplicity of a black curtain and a spotlight, but she also appreciated how much she had grown. Back then, she was the one carrying garment bags and learning quietly in corners. Now she was often the one giving guidance, helping younger assistants find their feet. It was a full circle in the most satisfying way. There's something special about rising slowly, about learning through doing, not skipping steps, not chasing fame, just being present in the work, staying curious, and building confidence through action. That's what shaped her. That's what allowed her to walk onto any set, look around, and feel like she belonged there. And all of it started with small steps. There were moments when everything felt too hard. The kind of moments that come late at night, after hours of stitching and planning, when the body is tired and the mind starts to question everything. There were jobs where nothing went right, where the budget was too small, the timelines were too short, and expectations were sky high. There were fittings where costumes didn't fit, colors clashed under stage lights, or materials shrank unexpectedly in the wash. It was frustrating, exhausting, and sometimes deeply disheartening. But despite all of that, She never wanted to give up. Even when things were falling apart, she somehow found a way to keep going. Maybe it was because she believed so strongly in what she was doing. Maybe it was because she knew that challenges weren't the end of the story. They were just part of the process. So when things got tough, she took a breath, rolled up her sleeves, and started again. There were times when she doubted herself, not just once, but many times. Standing in a crowded wardrobe room, surrounded by racks of half-finished costumes, she would wonder if she was good enough. There were others who had more experience, more connections, bigger names. And yet, when she looked at her work, when she saw the little details that only she had thought of, she reminded herself that creativity isn't measured by status. It's measured by heart, by thought, by care. She stayed motivated by returning to the story. That was always the anchor. Whenever things felt overwhelming, she'd go back to the character. Who were they? What had they lived through? What would they choose to wear? Suddenly, the stress would quiet down and the creativity would return. She wasn't just designing a costume. She was telling someone's truth through clothing. That kept her inspired, and she found that creativity often came from limits. When she didn't have the perfect fabric, she learned to dye what she had. When she couldn't find the right piece, she repurposed something old into something new. Constraints pushed her to think differently. She learned to solve problems on the spot, to adjust quickly, to improvise when things didn't go according to plan. What once felt like setbacks became opportunities to grow. It made her more resourceful, more flexible, more inventive. Of course, there were emotional challenges too. Not every team was kind. Not every project went smoothly. She had to learn how to stand her ground, how to communicate clearly, how to protect her time and her voice. In the beginning, she said yes to everything. Over time, she realized that saying no was sometimes just as important. She began to choose work that aligned with her values, with her creative instincts. That gave her room to breathe and, more importantly, room to thrive. Support didn't always come from expected places, but it came. A quiet compliment from a director, a thank you from an actor, a message from a fellow designer. Those moments lifted her up when she needed it most. They reminded her that what she did mattered, that even if most people never noticed the hours behind each button or seam, the impact was real. She also made space for inspiration. Museums, street-style books, films, anything that sparked curiosity. She kept a small notebook filled with clippings, sketches, and ideas. Whenever she felt stuck, she'd flip through its pages and find something that reignited her imagination. Sometimes, a single image or word could unlock an entire design. Through all the challenges, she never lost her sense of play. Even in the busiest times, she tried to approach her work with a spirit of exploration. Every costume was a puzzle, and she loved the process of putting it together. She learned to trust herself, to be proud of her work, and to find joy in the act of creating, even when it wasn't easy. She didn't pretend the journey was perfect. It wasn't, but she kept showing up, kept creating, and kept believing that each struggle was shaping her into the artist she was meant to be. And that belief made all the difference. She never imagined it would happen so soon. One day, she was adjusting collars in a small studio, and the next, she was standing on a film set, watching her designs under the bright lights of a major production. It wasn't about luck, it was about the years of preparation, the hours behind the sewing machine, the quiet persistence that no one sees but that changes everything. The opportunity came through someone she had worked with years earlier. Someone who remembered not just her work, but how she worked, focused, flexible, and completely committed to the story. The project was a period drama set in the 1940s. The attention to detail was intense. Every costume had to be historically accurate yet visually compelling. The stakes were high. She wasn't just part of the background anymore. She was on the main team, responsible for key looks that would appear in close-up shots, posters, and trailers. It felt surreal to watch an actor step into one of her costumes and suddenly transform into a character from another time. Every button, every stitch had to hold up under scrutiny, not just from the camera, but from millions of eyes around the world. When the film was released, her work was on screen for only a few minutes at a time, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that it was there, and it helped shape how the characters were remembered. She sat in the cinema on opening night, heart-pounding, waiting for the scenes she knew so well, and when they appeared, when the lighting hit the fabric just right, when an actor delivered a powerful line in a jacket she had tailored, it felt like quiet victory. After that, the doors opened a little more easily. Producers began reaching out. She was invited to work on a mystery series that became incredibly popular. This time, the tone was different, modern, sleek, and psychological. She had to rethink everything. It wasn't just about making clothes look good. It was about using costume to tell a deeper story. What did this character hide? What did they want the world to believe? Clothes became symbols, sharp lines for control, soft textures for vulnerability. Every scene required new decisions, and she was ready for them. As the episodes aired, she started receiving messages from viewers, fans, and even aspiring designers. They noticed the choices she had made. They asked about colors, styles, references, and she realized something powerful. People were connecting with the stories, yes, but they were also connecting with the details that helped those stories feel real. Her work wasn't just part of the picture. It helped build the world. The momentum continued. A streaming platform picked up a film she had worked on, and suddenly her designs were being seen in over a dozen countries. She didn't think about fame. What mattered most was that the characters felt authentic. Whether it was a detective walking down a rainy street in London, or a teenager discovering their identity through fashion. Her job was to support the emotion, to give visual truth to a script. She was invited onto talk panels, featured in short interviews, and credited in articles about design in modern cinema. Each time, she tried to stay grounded. The spotlight wasn't something she chased. It was just a reflection of how much she loved the work. What people saw in the finished product was built on layers of quiet dedication, collaboration, and care. And still, she kept learning. On every set, no matter how big, she treated it like her first. She listened to directors, asked actors questions, and paid close attention to how audiences responded. Being in famous films or popular series didn't change her approach, and deepened it. It reminded her that no matter how far she'd come, there was always more to discover. Sometimes she would walk past a poster or see a scene pop up online and think, I remember pinning that collar. I remember choosing that fabric at the last minute. Those little moments carried more meaning than any red carpet or press release, because behind every big production were 1,000 small decisions, and she had made many of them with care. What once felt like an impossible dream had become part of her everyday life. But the wonder of it never wore off. She still felt that quiet joy, that spark of pride, every time her work appeared on screen. If there's one thing the journey has shown her, it's that dreams don't work unless you do. There's a certain magic in dreaming big, yes, but it's the everyday effort, the repetition, the showing up, the trying again, that turns a dream into something real. People often imagine creativity as this sudden spark of genius, something effortless. But behind every creative moment she's had, there's been hard work. Quiet, steady, often unnoticed, but absolutely essential. She's seen both sides of it, the hope and the hustle. The vision of a finished costume is always beautiful in her mind, but it never arrives fully formed. It starts with long hours of research, with messy sketches, with failed ideas and discarded fabrics. There are days when inspiration flows easily and others where nothing feels right. Yet she keeps going, not because it's always easy, but because it matters to her deeply. That's the thing about dreams. They pull you forward even when the path is slow or unclear. She remembers times when she worked on 3 projects at once, barely sleeping, balancing tight budgets and tighter deadlines. It wasn't glamorous. It was stitching hems under dim lighting. It was standing in fabric stores for hours trying to find something that matched a director's vague description. It was asking questions, making mistakes, starting again. But it was also watching her work walk out onto stage or screen, and feeling that quiet sense of accomplishment bloom in her chest. Hard work taught her more than any textbook ever could. It taught her to be patient. It taught her that progress is rarely loud or fast. Sometimes it's just a small improvement. A better seam, a faster fitting, a clearer understanding of a character's emotional arc. And those small wins add up. They build confidence, they build skill, they build a body of work that, over time, speaks louder than any words ever could. She also learned that dreaming isn't about fantasy, it's about focus. Having a dream doesn't mean waiting for luck. It means putting yourself in the position to be ready when the chance arrives. It means saying yes to the unknown, showing up prepared, and being brave enough to try again when things go wrong. She's seen it happen time and time again. The opportunity that comes after the 3rd or 4th try, not the first. And that's where hard work makes all the difference. It keeps the dream alive when nothing else does. Along the way, she's met others who share that same spark. Designers, directors, actors, assistants, all of them driven by something deeper than money or fame. They love the work, they respect the process. And when you're surrounded by people who give their all, it pushes you to give your best too. The energy is contagious. It reminds her why she started, why she still sketches ideas late at night, why she still feels that little flutter of excitement before every new project begins. What she's come to understand is that dreams change as you grow. At first, the dream was simply to be part of the world of storytelling. Then it was to design something meaningful. Later, it became about mentoring others, about contributing to stories that matter, about creating moments that stay with people long after the credits roll. But no matter how the dream evolved, the work remained. It was always the constant, always the path forward. It's easy to look back and see only the highlights, the films, the recognitions, the moments of success. But those moments shine only because of the long, quiet road behind them. Every fitting, every rejected sketch, every missed train on the way to set, it was all part of it. She wouldn't change any of it because it wasn't just about arriving at a destination. It was about becoming the kind of person who could walk that path with purpose, with integrity, and with heart. The dream never promised ease, but it did promise meaning, and for her, that's more than enough. From the very beginning, the goal was never just to tell a story. It was to tell it in a way that learners could connect with, follow easily, and truly understand. Every sentence, every word, was chosen carefully to support the people listening, not just native speakers, but those learning English as a second language. That's why the language stays clear, natural, and distinctly British. Because learning doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to feel real, authentic, and spoken with care. It's one thing to watch a film or listen to a story in English. It's another thing entirely to understand it, really understand it. That's where clarity matters. It isn't about oversimplifying or speaking slowly in a robotic way. It's about speaking clearly, using everyday words and expressions. and pausing in the right moments so listeners have time to take in what's being said. The story flows like normal speech, but always with the learner in mind. No unnecessary jargon, no rushed delivery, just clean, understandable English that feels like a conversation. She wanted it to reflect how people actually speak in Britain, not just textbook phrases, but the rhythm and tone of real life. A sentence here, a soft idiom there, a casual phrase that learners might hear in everyday settings. It makes a difference. It helps learners not only grow their vocabulary, but also begin to feel the language, to recognize patterns, expressions, tone shifts, to hear a word used in a story and then recognize it in a TV show or on the street or in a conversation. That kind of learning sticks. There's also something special about listening to English spoken with a British accent. It carries its own character, its own music, and when it's spoken with intention, clearly, gently, without mumbling, it becomes a powerful tool for learning. Learners start to pick up the subtle differences in pronunciation. They start noticing how syllables are stressed, how certain letters are softened, how emotion carries through a sentence. And slowly, without even realizing it, their own listening improves. Then their speaking starts to catch up too. Subtitles play a big part as well. When learners see the words as they hear them, something clicks. It builds a bridge between written and spoken language. They can stop, replay, read along, compare. They notice spelling, punctuation, structure, and it's all wrapped up in the flow of a story. That combination, clear audio and accurate subtitles, turns passive watching into active learning. And the best part, it doesn't feel like studying. It just feels like being part of the story. The vocabulary in these stories isn't random. It's chosen with care based on real life themes, conversations, and situations. It's designed to support learners at the A2 to B1 level, people who already know the basics but want to grow. So the language is slightly challenging, but not too far out of reach. New words are introduced naturally in context, so learners can guess their meaning and then confirm it as the sentence continues. It's learning by immersion, by seeing how words behave, how they live inside a sentence. That's the beauty of storytelling as a learning tool. Grammar becomes invisible. It's still there, of course it is, but it doesn't feel like a lesson. It just feels like life unfolding. Learners hear the past simple used naturally, question forms spoken without hesitation, contractions and prepositions landing exactly where they belong. Over time, this constant exposure builds a kind of instinct. Learners stop translating in their heads. They begin to think in English, to feel the rhythm, to know what sounds right, and beyond the technical side, there's something even more important happening. Learners connect emotionally. They hear about someone following a dream, facing doubt, working hard, growing into their purpose, and they relate. That emotional connection creates motivation. It reminds them why they're learning in the first place, not just to pass an exam or travel abroad, but to understand people, to express themselves, to be part of something bigger than their own language. That's why it's told the way it is. Clear, honest British English, not overly polished but real, not textbook perfect but life perfect, because learners deserve stories they can follow and voices they can trust, voices that guide, support, and inspire them as they grow in the language. And if, along the way, they also feel encouraged, then that's the best kind of learning there is. And that brings us to the end of the story. We've followed a journey filled with creativity, challenges, and quiet determination. From those first steps, following a simple dream, to working in theaters, on TV sets, and even on famous films, it's clear that with passion and perseverance, so much is possible. We've seen how the path wasn't always easy, But by staying motivated, creative, and focused, success began to take shape, bit by bit, stitch by stitch. It's a powerful reminder that dreams don't work unless we do. And throughout this journey, you've been learning too, growing your vocabulary, improving your pronunciation, and sharpening your listening skills through clear British English. These small steps in your English learning add up, just like they did for her career. So keep going, keep listening, keep learning, and most of all, keep believing in your own progress. Thank you so much for joining me today. See you next time for another English story. Take care and happy learning.